So in the previous video, we encountered a problem which is related to authentication, right? Which is when the leave review component try to be loaded, the user ID claim has a very large number there. And we analyze the reason, right? We're seeing that because we're not going through this line of code. So therefore, the number there is just a random huge number. I don't know where they get that number from, but certainly this line didn't run. So what is this line? Let's quickly go through the reasoning before we do anything, right? We have this handle sign in callback, and this handle sign in callback is this method that contains this line of code that adds the user ID to the claim. But we need this. We actually need this. So therefore, this method absolutely needs to be called, but this method is only called in two different places, which is two different minimal API endpoints. And these two different minimal API endpoints are being triggered when it is specified in this minimal endpoint. Right? So the first minimal endpoint is for attendee authentication. The second one is for organizer authentication. But when we use the authorize attribute to protect the leave review page, it doesn't go through any of these two endpoints. Therefore, the redirect URL is set to use the leave review page. Right? It's automatically come back to that page. So therefore, this handle sign in callback method here, this is not being triggered, and that creates the issue. So in order to fix that, we have to somehow trigger this handle sign in callback, and that's what we're going to do in this video. I know that we manually specify the sign in callback, right? That we manually specify the redirect URL because we were able to do that manually from the external login buttons component. From that component, we trigger either this URL or this URL. So if we go to our external login component, and I believe it's a shared component, so external login buttons component over here, we have two different possibilities. If it's organizer, then we go over here. Otherwise, we go over here. So because we have this control, therefore we can manually control, we can manually add the redirect URL. Whereas we are not able to do this for any other places. This is only possible when we use the external login button. But that's why I call it a bug, because we came up with a solution. It seems to be working, but it didn't cover the entire cases. Right? In order to actually fix the bug, we need to be able to call this handle sign in callback in all kinds of situations, not just limited to the situations that we have control over. Right? We have to call this for the situations that we don't even have control. So how do we do that? We can do that in the program.c file. Remember here, when we configure Google Authentication here, we already have this on tickets received, and we're signing in with the context principle, right? I don't want to go through this over again to explain why this principle needs to be used to actually create a cookie with this sign in async method, right? You can go through this entire series to see why we did that. But when we are facing this particular issue, I'm thinking that this line needs to be removed. This is not enough. What needs to be happening here is that we need to call the handle sign in callback method right over here. See, we're recreating the cookie anyways. So therefore, this line, when it's removed, it's okay because we create a ticket anyway. We create the cookie anyway. But if we can call this method, the benefits is that not only we are creating the cookie, but also we're including all of the claims in that cookie. Right? Let's try to do that. And how do we do that? I can just simply turn this into a public method, right? And this is a static method. And the class is a static class. So very easily, I can just say authentication endpoints, and then I can say handle sign in callback, and I just provide whatever I need to provide over here, and it's already generated the code for me. Let's break it down into different lines here so that looks pretty good. So we are getting the IDB context factory. This is the only thing that is slightly complicated, but we're lucky that we have AI to generate the code for us, so we don't have to worry about how we can do this. The get result, get awaiter thing needs to be removed because we're going to just use over here. Okay. So here, after getting the context, we need to determine whether this is for organizer or regular user. And so what we can do is we can use context.return URL. Remember, if we remove, see here, I'm going to actually remove this, right? And I'm also going to remove this. So it's because it's not necessary anymore, right? This callback is already handled. The only reason why we do the callback is to call this method. Now we're calling it there. I know I haven't finished the code in the program.cs, but I need to comment out this so that I can explain you what is happening here. So I comment this out, and we're not calling this, and we don't need to call this either. So therefore, nowhere in our system that we are specifying the return URL, which means the return URL is going to be the page that it hits. Now, we also comment out this line. This line is important because in the cases that we use external login buttons, we don't know what the return is. So we want to actually just add this line at the end of this handle sign callback here so that it always return back to the home page. Now, if we come over here, right? So we are going to check whether the return URL contains organizer or not. And I'm going to do a string comparison ordinal ignore case here. So see, this return URL is a nullable string. So if it's null here, there, this means it's false. And then finally here, we need to pass this principal into this method in order to use it to create the claims. So we are going to create another optional parameter and just call it principal, right? And we are going to feed this principal over. So here it's generating this error for me. Operator cannot be, okay, because this return URL is a string, so I want to add a question mark over here. I don't know why it didn't get green line. It should the green line. Now I have the principal parameter over there. I'm going to add it over here at the end as well. Let's actually break this down into different lines so that we can see it clearly as well. And here it's going to be claims principal, and it's nullable, and default value is null, so that we can call it. Let's add a comma over here. We can call it over here. And I think probably I spelled it wrong in some places. Principal. Oh, okay. This is okay. Okay. So now we are always calling this handle sign in when we receive the ticket. And when we receive the ticket, this principal usually has a value. And when it has a value, we're using this principal to call this method. And when we call this method, we can make some changes over here because we are not going to have anything in the context, right? This context, we didn't create the user yet. And so this user is the claims principal. And if we are not using the signing async over here, this context, it will not contain that user, or it will contain the user, but it's unauthenticated. It's not authenticated. So we're not going to check this, but data comes from principal. Right? So here, we're not going to use context.user. What we are going to do is we're going to use the principal to replace the context.user. And only when the principal is null, okay, so I'm going to say principal. If it's null, then we're going to use the context.user. And then we just need to make sure that this one redirect back to the root. And this should fix our problems. Here we comment out this one because we no longer need to use it. And the organizer one, we comment out these lines, and this one should also be comment out. But I remember this one is also used in some other places. So let's do see this one, we're using this directly here. So we cannot, so this is for becoming a organizer, right? And this is the signing process. If the user is already logged in, then we manually redirect the user to the sign callback organizer, right? And that will basically call this. So I guess we can also remove this. This is not useful either because we can go over here. We can basically, no, it would be very hard to call the method, right? It would be hard to call the method. It's not so easy to call the method because we don't have the HTTP context over here. So let's uncomment it. And this is the only reason. So we don't need this line because the handle signing callback actually redirect to the root anyways. We delete this, we don't need it, and we delete this. So we're simplifying the authentication process. And the only reason why we're able to do it is because in the program.cs over here, we are directly calling this callback here, and here we are using the context of principal. So this context is not the HTTP context. This is ticket received context, right? And when we receive the claims from Google, the claims is in the context of principal over here, and we're passing it into this particular method here, where we use it to create the claims, and we use it to create users if the user it doesn't exist yet, and we also construct different claims based on the database return values, for example, the user ID, right? So this is handled right here for any situation. It doesn't matter whether it is manually triggered by us in the external login buttons case, or it's automatically triggered by the authentication middleware in the case where we use the authorized attribute to protect a particular page. So we need to make sure this is handled 100%. And that's why we have it right here. And this one, we don't need it anymore, right? And here we suppress the default behavior right here. That's all we need. Okay, and this time I think it's good enough. Let's run this application again just to test everything and make sure it still works. Make sure it works. Okay, let's come to our page over here and let's choose a event and try to leave a review for an organizer. And let's click on this, and now it's already giving an error. So let's check what the problem is. It says the input string was not in the correct format. And which line is that? Leave review comment 87. Let's go to leave review component 87, right? Leave review component 87. This is weird because we are using we're not using the authorized attribute. Yeah, we gotta use the authorized attribute. But there's a possibility that the authorized attribute doesn't kick in on the parameter set. We'll see what happens. But I'm pretty sure this is related to that. Authorize. Now let's try again. Also, it kicks me over. I want to retry it. I don't want to assume that it fixed the problem. So let's click on this leave a review button. And now I still have this problem. See, I'm still having this problem. It's at line 89, and I'm pretty sure this is the same issue. I believe that this onParameter set is triggered first before the authentication middleware is taking over, right? I think the way to fix it is I'm going to check whether base stuff is authenticated or not. Only when it's true do I actually want to continue the stuff. If it's not true, then it's going to go through that authentication middleware, which is going to take the user to Google account. Okay, let's run it again. And I'm going to go to the home page. I don't want to stay here because it's not accurate. You see, it just kicks me over. It's not the correct way to test it. I don't know why this authorized attribute is not working. Let's try again. I'll go over here. So obviously I don't have a cookie in my application yet. So let's check cookies. So I have only this anti-forgery cookie, right? So therefore I should be kicked over to Google, but I'm not. That's pretty weird if it's authenticated. You know what I will do is I'm going to add a else portion here. And what I would do is I'm going to use a navigation manager. Did I have a navigation manager over here? So let's inject the navigation manager over here. And then let's use the navigation manager to force a reload of the page. So I'm going to say refresh. And the refresh, I think the default one is a force reload. Okay. Oh, it's actually generated this comment. That's actually pretty nice. Refresh to ensure user is authenticated. So we got to refresh that to trigger the authorized attribute. Why it's not triggering the authorized? It's probably because the page, see, we're navigating to this page based on but within the channel. The navigation, so go over here, and then here, see, this is a anchor element, and it goes over there within the signal channel. The redirection is within the signal channel. Therefore, it probably doesn't kick in. The authorization doesn't kick in for some reason. We can fix it, what I did, or here, no, we can't. Here you can have a button, and then you can use navigation manager and say, I want to force a navigation instead of just use the signal channel. I think that's harder. So I think what I did is fine. Let's see whether it works or not. So let's click on this. See, it takes me over to here. Okay, that's pretty good. That's pretty good. I'm gonna choose a user. It redirects me back to the home page. Why it's doing that is because in the program.cs, not in the program.cs, in this handle signing async here, By the way, let's delete this. We don't need it anymore. In that, at the end, we added this line. So we don't know what the page is. Oh, by the way, we might be able to know. So this is the redirect URL, right? So I'm going to go over here. Let's try to make it even better. So I'm going to have a nullable string, and I'm going to say redirect URI by default. Let's go back over here. I'm going to add that. So redirect URI is context.redirect URI. Let's see what's going to happen this time. Okay, so let's run it again. We're having some issue, and this is the old issue that we always encounter. Let's do a .NET build. Okay, and let's run it again. Now we're here on the home page. Let's go to, actually log out first, and let's go over here, and let's click on this and leave a review. Now it kicks me over here. I select the first user, and oh, I didn't do anything, right? So I forgot to actually use this redirect here. This is my bad, sorry about that. So I'm gonna say this one has, if string that is null or empty white or white space, right? If this is true, then we use the root. Otherwise, we use the redirect URL. That will be, let's try. And probably we're encountering the same issue. Let's go over here and run the .NET build again. Okay, start debugging. Start without debugging. Now we're looking at this. Let's log out again and try to leave a review. And it should kick me over here. It takes some time to kick me over, right? That's not a pretty good behavior. We might need to think about why it's doing that and how to fix that. Let's select the first user, and then you see it takes me back right here. And if I try to leave a review and say not bad, right, 4-star review, and it does this, it's pretty good. So now that we changed the authentication process completely, now I'm going to go log out and try to test all of the places where we need login, right? So let's try to, first of all, let's go from simple to complicated. The most straightforward one is this one. Login with Google. Let's go through this, and I'm gonna log in with the first user anyways. And you see, this is keeping me in a loop. I'm always here. Why I'm always here? I have a feeling it could be because of this. So maybe we shouldn't worry about the return URL. So if we take the user always to the root, maybe we can just fix that problem. Okay, so let's go log in with Google and try again. Now I'm fine, right? It's only just because of this. But what is the redirect? I'm very curious about it. So let's run a debug. I'm going to log out and log back in, and I'm going to select the user. So I want to know about the redirect here. Oh, the redirect is authentication/Google, and that's why. You know what? Let's continue. What I will try is I'm going to go here. I'm going to sign out and then go over here and go to reviews and going to leave a review. Here is going to take me over, and then I'm going to sign in. This time I'm going to check the redirect URL, right? So this is my actual page. So this is automatic, right? That actual page URL is automatic. So because of that, I can do a logic here. So I can say if redirect URL is not null and redirect URL contain Google. I'm going to use again, ignore case. But what I mean is if it doesn't contain, right? If it's not null and it doesn't contain Google, then I know it's valid to use. Then I'm going to redirect to the redirect URL. Otherwise, we're going to take the user to the root. This would be better. Okay, now let's run without debug. But first of all, we got to fix this issue. .NET build. Let's run it again. Okay, let's test all the scenarios starting from a straightforward login. Go over here. Now I'm fine. I'm going to the home page. That's good, right? And we should be able to do a lot of different things, but I certainly am not allowed to review anymore because I have reviewed it already, so it gives me an error. Okay, so that's good. Now I want to go through this organizer scenario. So I'm going to go over here and I'm going to register as an organizer. Click on this and I'm fine, right? Although I don't have any transactions, I don't have any events, but I'm a organizer and the whole workflow works. Now let's try different scenarios. First of all, let's try this scenario where we're going to leave a review here and it should kicks me. And then let's choose this one and I can try to leave a review, but it doesn't work. Okay, so now I'm going to log out again and I'm going to try some of the other Let's say this org/transactions. I go over here, you see it kicks me out. If I use, let's say I use the second user, I should have some transactions over here. It works, it takes me over directly to this transactions page, and I can see some transaction. That's pretty good, although I don't have any money. Okay, so that's good, and let's log out. Let's try some other page over here. So org/ I should have events, right? No, it's not called that. I forgot the pass. Let's take a look. So when we manage events, we have view created events. And what is this URL? Org events. Let's try org events. Now it takes me over, and I'm going to select the second user because I do have some events, and you can see that it takes me over to this event, which is pretty good. I think I test all the stereos, and I'm happy with the fix of the authentication, and I'll see you in the next video.